another very special episode of the Square and Compass podcast this week. Special for a couple reasons. First of all, special because of the guest, Worshipful Brother Allison Gowling. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Cameron, for inviting me. I appreciate that.
So obviously it's special because we got a great guest, but it's also special because of what this first interview kicks off, which is Square and Compass sitting down with the candidates for 2021 Grand Lodge. Square and Compass has reached out to as many of the candidates so far. I'm recording this on May 9th. So I've reached out to as many of the candidates as I could through social media, and I left an open invitation on the Facebook page. And I've also reached out to the candidates' Masonic lodges. I am hoping to have every single candidate appear on this podcast to discuss their Masonic journey and give Masons throughout Ontario the chance to get to know them. So as of May 9th in this recording, I've got 4 confirmed interviews. Another couple of brethren have expressed interest and we're just working on scheduling, but I hope to have as many of the 29 candidates as I can in the coming weeks. So every day this week, it is my hope to have another episode featuring another candidate. But the first candidate, and I should also mention, I should throw this at the start, the Square and Compass podcast does not speak on behalf of the Windsor Masonic Temple, does not speak on behalf of the Grand Lodge of Canada. In the province of Ontario, all opinions expressed are my own. And certainly this isn't meant to promote any one candidate over any other. This is a chance to give, hopefully, all the candidates a chance to join us and speak to myself, and through myself, hopefully, Masons across Ontario. And if any candidates are watching this that haven't heard from me for any reason, please get in touch. My email address is on the bottom of the screen, look down, and in the description to this video. And with that, Worshipful Sir, thank you so much for being here again.
Again, thank you very much, Cameron. I appreciate the invitation.
So let's start at the basics. You are a candidate for Grand Lodge 2021. Talk about your candidacy, the position you are a candidate for, and just what was your impetus in putting your name forward?
Well, I'm a candidate for the position of Grand Senior Warden. I've had the honor to be nominated, and I'm very deeply appreciative of the opportunity to run. I believe in giving back and doing what I can for whatever I'm a part of, whether it be Masonic Lodge or participating in community groups. I believe in being active. I'm not one for sitting on the sidelines and just watching. I can't do that. All my life I've been very active within the community. I've got a volunteer resume that fills an entire page from over the last 40 or 50 years. I've got what's the word I'm thinking of? I've served on boards and on executives for many organizations. When I was practicing law, I was a member of the Paralegal Society of Ontario, and I wound up being on the board for 11 years and being vice president, secretary, and I was president twice. And this was during the years when we were trying to be accepted into the Law Society and have a little more clout. However, like I say, I'm a person that believes in not standing idle. I'm an old farm boy, and and I'm a tongue in cheek. The day you stop moving is the day you die. And I'm always moving forward. I'm always doing something. I enjoy helping other people. If I see, a senior in the parking lot of the grocery store struggling with their groceries, I'll go over, give them a hand, smile and a wave, and I'll walk away. That's the way I am. But with Lodge, this is a chance to serve Grand Lodge, serve the lodges, serve the brethren. An organization can't run without people to run for various offices, whether that be the Board of General Purposes or one of the other positions in Grand Lodge, elective positions in Grand Lodge, such as the wardens or Grand Registrar or positions like that. That's what drives me. That's what drives me.
I remember first joining Freemasonry and being a newer Mason. Every year, starting in April and May, people start talking about Grand Lodge and about elections and about the nomination process. You start to hear all these terms being thrown around, but especially for newer Masons and even for some of the older ones, the extent to which they understand what these positions are, what Grand Lodge is, can be, it takes a while to learn, and there can still be misconceptions about it. So I guess in your, how do you view the role of being the Grand Senior Warden and being a Grand Lodge officer in general, and more generally, what do you view the role of Grand Lodge as being in relation to both Masonic lodges, but also in relation to being a representative of Freemasonry in Ontario and to the world?
Well, first of all, Grand Senior Warden, for the most part, it's a ritualistic position. The description in the Constitution, I don't have it in front of me, but I'll try to quote it. The wardens are there to assist the Grand Master. That's the description. But there's more than that. There's visiting lodges to do presentations or give a lecture, or there's something else that I have in mind. There was that's my wife in the background.
Yeah, there's some laundry.
Laundry, yeah. You're there to also for that year. You're also there you're there to sit on the board and to assist the board where necessary. But you have to remember, you can't be policy or procedure driven. Like I tell people, tongue in cheek, I can't promise you a chicken in every pot or a car in every driveway. Like I'm there to help the lodges. It's service that it's service that I can offer. Well, that's my main thrust.
That word assist, or the broadness of a definition like that, right? To assist the Grand Master, to assist the most worshipful, that does lead to, trying to think of the right word is, it does allow somebody in that position to put their own stamp on it. I remember when I became worshipful master for the first time, talking to other people about like, what is the responsibility of a worshipful master? How do I proceed in this role? And obviously there are ceremonial duties and there is openings and closings, but they, beyond that, every past master told me, it's your position to put your stamp on, and every worshipful master of every lodge will they told me you can be as busy as you want to be in the role.
Yeah.
And so I think that is the same thing with the position that is ceremonial, is you do have the opportunity to really, because it's so broad, you can really have an opportunity to imprint yourself in the role and set certain standards or ideas, or because you're so involved, you'll have the chance to speak with Grand Lodge, the most worshipful, about what you would like to see and the direction you would like to see Masonry go in the future.
Well, right now, as you well know, there's and I realize that the word change is not in a Mason's vocabulary usually, but we've seen a lot of changes over the last 4 or 5 years, and we're going to see more. And this pandemic has given the lodge an opportunity to reshape itself and reinvent itself. A couple of years ago, Lincoln Lodge had their 100th anniversary, and they had a Grand Master's banquet. And I was talking with past Grand Master, most worshipful Brother Todd, and he was saying how he'd like to move away from the big party, so to speak, at the Royal York, and then instead having a series of regional Grand Lodges. And this is the addresses a lot of issues. Right now, you get people not just in Windsor, in Ottawa, or in North Bay or something. It's a long way to go to Toronto, and other than district deputies and district deputies elect, you hardly see anybody coming from Algoma or Algoma East, simply because of the distance involved. And then staying at the Royal York, I mean, you have to put a second mortgage on your house to stay at the Royal York for one night. And now this will be the second year we didn't have anything at the Royal York. And also, too, the voting is changing. Before, if you wanted to vote, you had to come to Toronto. Now, with the online voting, it opens it up, not just to the 7 or 8 or 900 eligible voters of the 10 Grand Lodge. It opens it up to the entire 30-odd thousand pardon me, maybe not that much. But, instead of 1,000, it opens it up to 10 or 20,000 votes with online. And I don't know what I could propose for more changes. I have some ideas, which I'll keep to myself for the time being. But
I do really.
I'm sorry?
So I do really like what you said, though. And that's something I've thought and talked about on this podcast is can you hear me?
No, I'm getting back out on the speakers again. Here, let's try this again. I apologize, Cameron.
No worries.
Is that better?
I can hear you. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you just on here. That's what I want.
So, I've talked about this. In fact, so we're recording this on May 9th, and tonight's episode, I discuss it. One benefit to having any Masonic event, but especially a Grand Lodge, in rotating locations or different cities. Yes, there's a benefit that it allows brothers to attend who maybe weren't able to before due to distance, but also it can provide a serious economic benefit to a smaller community.
Very much so.
You think about, I'm sure that even a city as big as Toronto appreciates all the business from a bunch of Masons all showing up for the week, and like you said, the Royal York gets the rooms rented out. But you consider some of these smaller towns who are perhaps more hurting, especially with COVID and jobs being lost. 100, even even 50 to 100 Masons showing up in a place like Moosonee, Kincardine, all these locations, right? I mean, Moosonee probably, I don't know what they have in terms of
I don't even know if the train runs there anymore.
So take Kincardine, because that's a good one. That's they have a Masonic lodge there. I've got to visit Kincardine Masonic Lodge on a few occasions. They've got couple of nice hotels, but it's a smaller town, obviously in cottage country. But yet you have several dozen, if not 100 and up Masons there. That's going to be a major economic boost for that town, for the restaurants in the town, for the hotels, for the tourism industry there, for the shops. And I mean, it's just another chance for Freemasons to impact in a positive way different communities throughout Ontario. I just think it just makes sense to me to start looking at different towns and cities and start rotating this thing a little bit more.
Yeah, again, going back to my days with the Paralegal Society, we were always accused of being Toronto-centric. So when I was president, I made sure we would have our spring conference and AGM in Toronto. And then the fall conference, we would have, say, in London or Chatham, maybe North Bay or Ottawa, so as to allow people from other areas to easily access it. And that proved popular. And I think it's time for, Grand Lodge to spread out for that. And I think, at least for the next few years, a lot of these large conventions and large get-togethers are going to go by the wayside, because of all the health concerns we're having now.
I wonder about that. I'm not sure. I don't know. I was supposed to be, and very sad to not be, but I understand why. I was supposed to be in Texas at the moment. Texas, I purchased a ticket for their Grandmaster's homecoming, and Texas and Florida and a few other Masonic jurisdictions in the States are back to large scale events. And that's not to say that Ontario should follow their lead, because every state and province is different, and vaccination rates. And there's a lot of different things that go into making these types of decisions. But I know I was talking to a few brothers who were saying, aren't you, are you sad or jealous to see other Masonic jurisdictions opening up to large scale events? And my answer was always, well, no, it makes me hopeful, because if today Texas, then that means eventually Ontario, once our vaccination rates. So I do suspect we'll go back to large scale meetings at some point, sooner or later. Maybe later than I would like, but it's coming down the pipe. It's just a matter of doing it safely.
Oh, it's not a question of if, it's a matter of when. And right now, we are so fortunate to have the Grand Master that we do, because here's somebody that's a retired doctor, and he's not that long retired, and he's and I can't think of a better qualified person to lead us in a health pandemic than Most Worshipful Brother David Cameron. Like, I've heard a lot of people gripe, "Oh, I can't go to lodge. What am I paying dues for?" And don't kid yourself. We are going to lose about 2,000 members a year through death and demits, but that's usually balanced off by initiations. But we're going to lose a lot more, because people are just going to get frustrated and walk away. Like at the lodge I attend, Hillcrest 594 in Hamilton, we've got 2 or 3 fellows waiting for their thirds, and they're chomping at the bit. We want to get them through, but we can't. And we've got other people knocking on the door that want to join, probably 8 or 10, maybe 12. And they're saying, well, when can we go? Well, we can't do anything right now until we get the say so. And that's not looking like until September, until at least the paperwork can start flowing. And probably it'll be Christmas or New Year's before we can do any degree work. But we are extremely fortunate to have in charge, Most Worshipful Brother Dr. Cameron. His leadership has been, absolutely terrific, over this past year, and I give him a lot of credit. Now, this is not what he signed up for, but he's, everybody has stepped up. You've got Most Worshipful Brother Gary Dowling as Grand Secretary. I mean, and he's no slouch. You've got Right Worshipful Brother Louis Damiam as the Chief Operating Officer, and between the three of them, they're doing, and Deputy Grand Master Tom Hogaboom, they're all doing a great job. But we'll get back eventually. A lot of us would like to get back now, but we can't. It just isn't safe enough until towards the end of the summer, when hopefully most of the province and the country has been vaccinated. Then it'll be safe to start gathering in small groups and working from there. But like I said, it's not a question of if, it's a matter of when.
Speaking of vaccinations,
I've had mine.
Me too. And I'll leave a link. Earlier in the pandemic, I spoke with Right Worshipful Brother and Dr. Oscar Allen from the Grand Lodge of New York. He is the chief of programs for the National Association of City and County Health Professionals. I don't know if you ever had a chance to meet him. He is a very, very smart and cool fella and dedicated Mason. He talked a lot about the vaccination process. And, at the time in the interview, and I've posted it a couple of times since, he did a lot to dispel or explain why the vaccines were safe. All the hesitancy around them we see sometimes in the news, why that hesitancy was not founded, and why it's safe and important to get them. I'll link him. He's a really cool guy, and I really enjoyed talking to him about it. That's something I've tried to do on my podcast a lot. And I guess this goes to a question of leadership, not so much from Grand Lodge in terms of leadership of Grand Lodge within lodges or within Freemasonry, but in the larger community. And it's not necessarily trying to think of how to put it, a fault or not fault or anything like that. But, when you think about the place Freemasonry used to hold in society in the 1920s, in the 1950s, how big it was, many Masonic temples were, in fact, vaccination clinics, including the Windsor Masonic Temple, for polio, for things like that. I've tried in my videos to connect the idea of getting vaccinated to, the Masonic thing to do, caring about people, just get vaccinated for yourself. But I guess, do you think that Freemasonry and Grand Lodges could be more vocal about encouraging people to vaccinate, encouraging Masons to wear a mask, social distance, do the responsible thing? I mean, they've done a great job within lodges of keeping things closed, explaining why they're doing it, being leaders. But what about being leaders in the broader community and, being examples for others to follow of things like vaccinations? I think I wrote on my Facebook, get your vaccine. It's the Masonic thing to do, something to that effect. I just wonder, I feel like Freemasonry is not as active in the public sphere, encouraging these good behaviors as they could be.
Well, there's a lot of message. Oh, there's messages that come out of Grand Lodge, and I think right now the media and the airwaves are very crowded, with all sorts of messages. And like I wrote a book on I wrote the family history and memoirs for a fellow in Jarvis. He'd done a lot over his life, including sitting in Queens Park for 15 years as MPP. And he said he remembers, you know, back in the early 50s when the polio swept through. His second eldest boy came down with polio. And he says he remembers people almost stampeding to to get themselves and their kids vaccinated. And now we fast forward 70 years, and you hear people going, "Oh, don't get vaccinated. They're putting a microchip in it. They'll be able to track you." You've got some woman in California that gets on all these talk shows like Dr. Phil and says, "Oh, don't get your kids vaccinated. The vaccine causes autism." Even though there's no evidence to prove it, even though that's been debunked time after time after time, people still believe this woman. And we've got, I don't know if we should get out in the mainstream media with an advertising campaign per se to encourage people to get vaccinated. I think you're going to see the majority get the vaccine on their own. And there's going to be the hardcore that you have to get out the horse and the block and tackle and drag them to it. There's going to be some people out there saying, no, 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 I'm not going to be vaccinated because it's a government conspiracy. I don't know if we should get involved in a mainstream campaign. I think with the messages that the lodge puts out now, Grand Lodge and the craft lodges, I think we should restrict ourselves to it. If somebody asks our opinion, that's one thing. But to go out and do a campaign, no, I don't think that's necessary right now.
In terms of just in general, the connection between Freemasons and Masonic lodges and Masonic temples and the communities in which they find themselves. I guess as a candidate for Grand Lodge, even though it's a ceremonial position, I guess how do you see? Do you think that those connections could be stronger? How would you look at strengthening them? There are many Masonic temples and lodges that do charity work, that do toy drives at Christmas, things like that. But I guess what do you think about those connections? Even in your own lodge, those connections between a Masonic lodge and the community, and if we need to look at strengthening those or how those are changing over the years.
Well, you've always got to keep the link strong. It's not a one-time, one-off thing. You have to go out, you have to work on it, you have to nurture it. And as you say, like you got some lodges that go out and do food drives and toy drives, etc. It's important that the community knows we're there. When I first joined lodge, I remember one of the brothers getting up and saying that it was on a district deputy night, so the lodge was crowded. He says the parents of his children, his children's friends at school, their house had burnt down and they'd lost everything. And they said, they had insurance, but it's not, turns out to be not near enough. And, we wound up passing the hat, and there was something, like almost $1,000. And this brother, took it out to him, and he says that, the whole family, had broken down, and they were so amazed and grateful. And that's being there for the community. The CHIP program is a great ongoing process. That lets the community know we're there, we're there, and we're supportive. And the CHIP program, Brother Ian Johnson in Hamilton has told me is always well received no matter where he goes, because people know the thrust of it. And he said people come up, oh, you're a Mason, oh, you people run this, oh, this is great. And I think the strengthening of the bonds with the community is something that has to be worked on all the time. You just can't, if you let it go, then it all falls apart. But that's what I think we have to do.
I agree completely. That is something else that I've tried to stress, especially through this. You don't need to be a member, or you don't need to be a Mason to recognize the importance of Freemasonry to a community and to the city, and to support a lodge. You can recognize its importance and support it without necessarily being a Mason, and it works both ways. Going back to the idea of the economics of it. I mean, even so, in normal times, a Masonic lodge meets twice per month. That's 2 times you have a junior warden who has to cater the event, right? That's a great time to make contacts with local businesses and small businesses and see if you can support them in the community. And that in turn, the businesses will recognize the importance of the Masonic lodge or the Masonic temple. And if, knock on wood, we start to move Grand Lodge around a little bit to some other locations, that's another chance for our communities to recognize the importance of Freemasonry coming to their town, their city, even this smaller towns in the middle of nowhere. There's got to be a way to get up there and maybe do some visitations and some support.
Oh yeah, and that's what I miss most, is the visitations.
Me too. I missed it a lot. But I think that's just a little thing that's one thing I would suggest to all the candidates is, instead of maybe focusing so much on Freemasonry and membership acquisition, maybe focus more on just community support and community relationships, not with the purpose of getting more members, but with the purpose of more community recognition of our importance to communities.
And that's something, like I said, that's always a work in progress. I think all the lodges do it to a greater or lesser degree. Some do it more and better than others. But all in all, I find that generally speaking, wherever you go, the lodges are well received in town. The people that know you're there, they know what you stand for, and they know the good work you do, for the community.
And we haven't had a chance yet. We focused on your candidacy and kind of the Grand Lodge level stuff, but talk to us a bit just about your Masonic journey. I know you've had a longer one, but how'd you get involved in Freemasonry? What has your Masonic journey been up to this point?
Well, believe it or not, I haven't even been in 25 years yet.
That's still longer than me.
My father joined when he was 41, and I joined when I was 42. I thought about joining back when I was in my 20s, but I was working shift work at the time, and it wouldn't have worked out. But I joined St. Andrew's number 62 in Caledonia in 1999, and I went through the chairs, and I was master in 2006. And I've also sat on the Grand Lodge Library Committee, a number of district teams, and I've been on the executive and served as president of both the Craft Association of the Hamilton Districts and the Hamilton Past Masters Association. I'd like to do more. Every time there's a new Grand Master, I tell them, if you need any help anywhere, give me a call. I'm a 32nd Scottish Rite Mason. I also work in robing in the far back corner of the Scottish Rite building in Hamilton, in the basement. So that's where you find me at reunions all the time. Except for the 32nd degree, I've got 3 parts in that. And then I should mention, I'm fifth generation Mason, and my two boys have followed me, so making it 6 generations, of Masons in our family. And I recently had the honor to go through the Royal Arch with my eldest son, which was, again, quite an honor and quite a thrill. And I've also had the pleasure of obligating both my sons in all 3 degrees.
If you were to, or you may, right now as it's being recorded, be speaking to or a younger or newer Mason may be watching this, I guess, what advice would you have for a newer brother? What would you say are some of the most important things he can take with him in his Masonic career, Masonic journey?
Well, be there for your lodge. You get out what you put into it. I mean, if you just show up and sit in the sidelines, you're not going to get as much out of it. But if you have to become a part of it, not just sit there and take it in. Be ready. If they ask you to take a chair and you feel comfortable, then take it. But the best advice is just come out and be active, be supportive, and you'll get a lot back more. And you get a lot back more than what you put in. That's my thinking. That would be my advice.
Here's a question I've been struggling with in my Masonic journey, and I don't know if you have any or what your thoughts might be, is should Freemasonry be a quote unquote fun experience?
Past Grand Master, Most Worshipful Don Mumby, once said, there's a place in lodge for mirth and humor. Yeah, you should go, you should have fun, but take your ritual work seriously. Like, it's one thing to go in and, you get needled, you needle other brothers. It's a back and forth, give and take. But, take your ritual work seriously. Like, you can have fun and be serious too. There's a time and a place for everything. Like, when I was master, I just said, when I greet a new master, I say, just remember, I says, they're going to laugh with you and they're going to laugh at you. I mean, we all make mistakes. Some of us make more than others. However, it's a matter of just picking up and moving on. But no, the ritual work is important, but also, having fun in the lodge. Like you got to remember the great Masonic myth. It's only one meeting a month, honey.
Yeah, well, I've never, and I talk about this in actually tonight's episode. I've never understood why we would tell somebody that because if you start, I know it's kind of said as a joke, but it became a joke because for a long time people would tell that to candidates, and it's like, why would you ever set the expectations so low on a? If you tell a candidate it's only one time per month, he's going to show up once per month. Like you would tell him it's 20 times a month, and then if he only shows up for 10, you've still got him for 10.
Well, I think it's more of a running joke than anything else. And when I know some fellows, uh, their wives get ticked off quite a bit when they're away so much. Other ones aren't so bad. Then there's my wife. She says usually, "What do you mean there's no lodge? Can't you go find something to do? Can't you get out of the house?" So I don't have that problem. I could be out twice a month. I could be out. I could be out. I could be doing Beatles masonry. 8 nights a week.
Yeah,
Like I said, I don't have a problem. I could disappear for a week and my wife wouldn't miss me. Um, but it all depends on your family dynamics. Like, you get a younger member in their 20s or their 30s or even their 40s. A lot of them have, kids that are preteens or teenagers, and they've got to be looked after and ferried around. It's all about balance. When I joined, my boys are in their teens, and it's just, everything's just progressed the way it has. It's simply by looking after whatever needs to be looked after.
it's the yeah this idea of Freemasonry as fun is something I've been thinking about because I guess it comes down to definitions, right? There's I'll give an example. So I was watching an interview with an actor, and he was talking about a particularly challenging movie set that he was on, to the point where it was so challenging. It was to the point where he didn't want to be part of the movie anymore. And every morning he thought about quitting. I'm going to quit. I don't like this. It's not enjoyable. But he stuck with it. Um, and he said, the things that made it not enjoyable also made it, a better performance. But then he said, at the end of it all, he went to watch the movie in a theater, and seeing the reactions of the audience around him and the people in the theater, he was happy he stuck with it. And he said, he wasn't doing it for himself. He was doing it. It's not about him. It's about other people. And I think that that's something that we've sometimes lost in Freemasonry, even in the way we advertise it necessarily or promote it. We always talk about it as being something that will be of benefit to the individual joining, and they'll become better for it, which I believe is true. But I believe more than that, a well-administered, well-run, and well-functioning lodge makes the world a better place. And even if on any given night, any particular Mason may not enjoy being in a lodge because he's tired, because he had a long day at work, because he wants to be at home, be asleep, him being there and contributing to the lodge will make it a better place.
Yes.
And will make the world a better place. So sometimes I think we emphasize the wrong thing. We emphasize personal enjoyment, and that's the goal of Freemasonry, instead of emphasizing the way in which Freemasonry and a lodge makes the world a better place.
Well, outside the lodge, not everybody knows that. But, and again, you could shout it from the mountaintops for a year, and you'd come down and people would say, "Oh, what'd you say?" It's a matter of, doing it for the lodge, your brethren, and for yourself. And you get the message out as best you can. That's all I can say. I mean, again, you get out, you get back what you put in.
Yeah,
and there's not much else to it.
I think that message is definitely something on a Grand Lodge level that could be emphasized, even because you are seeing that in other. What's interesting is a lot of advertising now or promotion. Um, the emphasis, and I think this goes to people searching for meaning in their lives, and maybe the world does not always provide meaning the way it used to, is on the struggle and actually promoting that struggle. So with exercise, with games, with Peloton, whatever it is, the emphasis is on the enjoyment, but it's the enjoyment that comes from the hard work and the effort that goes into it. And I think one of the best things about Freemasonry, and this is something even that we need, I think, to message to our own members. One of the best feelings that comes from Freemasonry is the struggle that then leads to the success. So the having a really long piece of ritual to memorize and then actually memorizing it and presenting it in lodge and being proud of yourself for doing that, or even being in a lodge, not having necessarily anything to do, but choosing to attend because somebody's getting their degree and you want to be there for them. And then, you sit through your 1000th degree and you can do it off by heart. But then at the end of it, the candidate thanks people for being there, for being a part of his night. So sometimes it's not fun in the moment, but it's rewarding overall.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, Cameron. I think you're absolutely right in that point. It's being there, being supportive of the lodge, your brothers. Many times, like I've got a phone call. Oh, well, if so and so is district deputy up in whatever district, they're having their homecoming tomorrow night. There's a carload of us going up. Come on with us. And that's where a lot of it is in the support, is in the visitation, and you go out for a good time, but it's also serious.
So this is just me speaking, not Grand Lodge, I don't represent anybody but me. This is always, or not always, but for the last few years, this has been my opinion. And I'm just curious, as a Grand Lodge candidate, your thoughts on it. I think I can guess based on everybody else's thoughts on it. Everybody thinks I'm crazy but me. But other jurisdictions, the Philippines, for example, do have attendance requirements. In the Philippines, you have to attend 3 meetings per year. Otherwise, you are suspended. In South America, but I can't think now. I was told in South America they have attendance requirements as well.
Well, so do the Lions and the Rotary and the service clubs. And that's not like I used to go to Rotary lunches as a guest in Caledonia, and there'd be somebody there from Dunville saying, "Oh well, I was out of town on business on Tuesday. I missed the Rotary lunch, so I'll come here to make it up." And they have a little book that they get stamped that so they don't get penalized, because if they miss a meeting, they get penalized. And this is one of the reasons that I joined Masonry, is because it wasn't a service club. It was run a lot differently. But attendance requirements, I don't know if that would go over very well. We've got a large segment of our membership that's they're seniors. I know a lot. I know a lot in their early late 80s, early mid 90s, and and if somebody if it's the middle of winter, let's just say it's an exceptionally cold winter, and they, it's too cold to go out tonight, I'm not going to lodge, and they don't go out for 3 or 4 months, to say, well, you didn't show up for the last 4 months, so we're going to suspend you. It's a great idea in theory, Cameron, don't get me wrong, but I think if you put it into practice, you'd have a lot of riots to deal with, more so than what we're having now with the new constitutional amendments they want to put through.
Are there ways to, so for example, you set up, parameters within the requirements. So for example, that doesn't apply to anybody who say lives outside of a 200-kilometer radius, because we do have brothers who, travel for work or whatever it is, they end up moving somewhere else, but they choose to maintain their membership in their mother lodge.
Yeah.
And also, you have exceptions around the idea of being sick. You don't require it if somebody has been ill, but even then, that encourages, one of the most annoying things as a secretary, or even as a worship master, as a member, and one thing that used to drive me crazy is you don't hear from a brother for a while, you try to track him down, you can't, and then you find out that he was ill or in the hospital or quite sick. But no one ever informed the lodge. I mean, because Freemasonry is so important to me, even though I don't have a family, my friends know. Well, I don't have a family owned, but my friends know, my parents know. Like, if something ever happens to me, make sure the lodge is aware. There's a way to get the message to them. So maybe it's not about an intense requirement, but about encouraging brothers to maintain contact with the lodge. So if they are missing, we're not scrambling to find them and then finding out 4 or 5 months down the line that they were ill. We know right away, so we can provide support if necessary.
Well, and I've seen that happen. You don't hear from somebody for several months, and finally somebody phones, and the guy's wife goes, "Oh, geez, I forgot to phone you. My husband died 3 months ago." I've seen that, people go in the hospital, and the last thing you think of doing is phoning the lodge, somebody in the lodge. And I know some lodges, they have phone trees set up. If somebody is, if they haven't seen somebody for a couple of months, they'll give them a call and see how they are. Attendance requirements? No, I don't think that's the way. I think the way to encourage attendance is if somebody misses a meeting, just phone up and say, "Hey, we missed you last night. Oh, well, my daughter was very ill, and I was home taking care of her. Oh, okay, glad everything's okay." So, well, I don't think attendance requirements. I just think more due diligence is what's needed.
Well, you agree with everybody else. I'm the only one, so there you go. But
well, you're not crazy. Like I said, it's a great idea in theory, but I think you'd have a real blowback if you tried to put it into practice.
If you knew me better, you know that I am in fact quite crazy. But
you don't know me very well, do you?
My lodge members can attest to that. But the due diligence piece, let's take that away, because I think we can both agree on that. It's important for a lodge to have phone trees and to have committees, sick and visitation set up to check on brothers.
Yeah, it's very important.
And also on the other end, I would encourage any brothers watching this, to do some due diligence on their part. Like, because you mentioned, and you're absolutely right, if you're in an emergency and going to the hospital, you're not going to be thinking about your Masonic lodge. So it's important to have a plan in place in advance. So somebody knows if there's an emergency and if somebody falls ill, there's somebody out there who knows to contact the lodge to let them know that this person's sick.
Yeah, I think that's not a bad idea. I think that's good. That's good.
And certainly, the importance of, and I've done this, having a section in your will for your Masonic regalia, so it doesn't end up in
the trash bin
or trash bin or whatever it is. It's just, the due diligence on the individual's part too. Like I said, even for myself, I've got, knock on wood, if I get hit by a bus plan, especially because I'm the secretary, to make sure that there's, that the lodge will be aware if something happens and I'm incapacitated or sick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So finishing up, I just want to remind everybody again, I am going to be having as many candidates as I can and talking to them all about their candidacies, Grand Lodge, why they are, why they have stepped forward or upon nomination, why they have decided to stand for the position. So Worshipful Brother Gowling, just one more time to any Masons in Ontario who are watching this, or for that matter, any Masons. We have a lot of Masons from the States and throughout the world who watch this. I guess the importance of standing for these positions in whatever Grand Lodge you're part of being, active in Freemasonry, just why is that so important to you? And, would you encourage other Masons to be active, to stand for positions if nominated, and to, I guess, to vote, to take part in Grand Lodge coming up in July?
Voting, whether it be for, a fraternal organization, or in a general election, if you can, it's your civic duty. And that's what's important. And it's important that people stand for these positions, because without people volunteering their time, where would these organizations be? I'll give it as an example. I refereed hockey, overlapped for 30 years, overlapped with 12 years of ball, 36 years, and there'd always be somebody griping at me about something. And I would turn to them and say, I says, do you ever think, how would your children play a game such as this? I says, without idiots like me standing behind the plate or standing by the hockey net and baseballs or hockey pucks are whizzing by you at 100 miles an hour. I says, if it wasn't for me, your kids couldn't play in organized sports. Remember that. There's got to be people there to volunteer to hold these organizations up, to make them work. Whether it be the Masons, the Lions, the Kiwanis, the Rotary, the Kinsmen. If you didn't have volunteers, everything will collapse in of itself. And Masonry is no different. I'm running because, well, one, I want to put something back, and I've been doing that with the lodge for a number of years, and I want to take it to the next level. And another reason I'm running is for the legacy of my father. Nearly 50 years ago, my father was on track to be district deputy in Brant District in 1973. But unfortunately, he fell ill and developed cancer and died before he was district deputy. And my mother always said she knew he had to die. It's just too bad that everything couldn't have waited for a year and a half or 2 years so he could have got his year in. So those are the two reasons I'm running. One, to put back, and two, for my father's legacy. And another reason that's come to mind, and I'd forgotten this till a few days ago. The lodge that I attend, Hillcrest 594, Hamilton District B, this is their 100th anniversary. So it would be kind of nice for a Hillcrest member to be Grand Senior Warden, to hold a position in Grand Lodge for our 100th anniversary. So those are my reasons. A little convoluted, but those are my reasons.
Those are very good reasons. Sound like good reasons to me. So with that, if anybody watching, check out the description to this video where I have provided Brother Gowling's information from Grand Lodge, also some information about the voting process for any Ontario Masons. Check back tomorrow for another interview with another 2021 candidate. And worshipful sir, I very much appreciate you taking the time to join me today. And
well, thank you very much for providing the platform. I mean, this takes a lot of organization and such on your part, Cameron. You're to be congratulated, not just for the work you do for for your lodge and the Windsor Temple, but for the craft in general. I would nominate you for a Mercer Wilson medal, but I think you've gone a little too far for that.
I appreciate that. That's very kind of you. Yeah, I have been in the East, but that is very, knowing the, having had the chance to meet a few Mercer Wilson award winners, that is high praise indeed, because the ones I met have been excellent Masons and men. So that is very kind of you to say.
Thank you very much.